At first glance, Danzo looks like a harmless old man, but then the bandages come off, and this is the exact moment that you've officially lost the match. His awakened combos shredded guards like paper. Every hit spat out a wind blade, meaning you were never truly safe. He could even instant kill you in later games. CyberConnect 2's CEO Hiroshi Matsuyama once said, "The way I balanced the characters is to make their pre and post awakening moves more balanced." On paper that sounds fair, but awakenings in Naruto Storm were never about making comebacks. They were about making your enemy despair. Throughout Naruto Storm, CC2 could never settle on what awakenings were meant to be. Were they about making comebacks, or steamrolling your opponent before they could ever fight back? From transformations with feral damage, to giants that forced you into a literal boss fight, we're covering awakenings that didn't just break the rules. They broke Naruto Storm altogether. So, for those who don't actually play Naruto Storm, anyone can awaken in this game after losing enough health. But the problem is, the disparity between the weakest and strongest of them is immense. At minimum, you get a stat boost, you move faster, you hit harder, etc. But at the other end, you'll get a completely new moveset, or even transform into a giant. And that disparity is causing problems as early as Storm 2 and Generations. Kakuzu became an elemental turret. Itachi, a walking tank. Chiyo was straight up war crimes because you could stack her jutsu 100 times over for nearly infinite damage. These were powerful, but they couldn't match the sheer ignorance of Sage Mode Naruto's awakening. This guy gained the ability to absolutely disintegrate health bars. 6 shots. That's all it took for him to KO a full health opponent with his jutsu. For an attack that activates mid-air and travels full screen, that's simply unforgivable. And don't think you could just hold guard until he transformed back. 2 hits was all it took to cut through your block with this move. Six Tails was pure nightmare fuel in a game already home to monsters. At this point, Awakenings had already failed as a comeback mechanic. They were character-specific luxuries. CC2 didn't just nerf them in response. They began experimenting with the ideas of what Awakenings were as a whole, and it would never be the same again. Before Storm 3, Awakenings had been defined by individuals with powerful transformations. Afterwards, the meta became abusing the system itself. Certain characters could now instantly awaken by flicking the analog stick. This was available right at the start of the match and could be used to stop or extend combos, quickly activate an awakening skill, or simply run away from your opponent. Aggressive characters like Mifune used this to crush opponents who didn't have an instant awakening of their own. Most traditional awakenings simply couldn't keep up with this new type of transformation, except of course for the giants. Historically, giant awakenings struggled in Naruto Storm. They were so big that they couldn't properly substitute out of combos. They would just drop right back into them. But in Storm 3, the opposite became true. Just in time for them to add the Jinchuriki to the game, giants suddenly became a force for evil. You could mash sub with your whole being, and you would still drop right back into their combos. Their pressure was inescapable. Awakenings had begun to cannibalize the Storm meta, so CC2 went back to the drawing board once again. And this time, Awakenings would come back in big ways. By the time Revolution came out, CC2 had clearly abandoned the idea of the comeback mechanic. Hashirama, Madara, and Obito were each capable of summoning massive deities to the fight. Meteors, trees, lava spires. These forms had full-screen AoE attacks that turned your normal ranked match into a straight-up boss battle. Even the tailed beasts look like stuffed animals compared to these forms. And when I say CC2 didn't consider these comeback mechanics anymore, it's because in Revolution, Awakenings weren't tied to your health. They were tied to your storm gauge. This meant you could be absolutely stomping your opponent and still summon the Ten Tails on them. In fact, being aggressive was the main way to fill your storm gauge. At this point, the Awakenings had done a complete 180 on their identity. You didn't pop these out for a comeback, you brought these out if you were winning, and you wanted to keep it that way. Maybe because it felt futile, but CC2 would eventually give up trying to balance Awakenings altogether. In the next game, they would fully lean into the chaos. If you like Awakenings, then you probably liked Storm 4. This game lets you power up with your entire team at once. It meant switching between awakened characters and even summoning awakened supports. They seemingly lasted forever and felt stupidly powerful to use. The only problem was that, since Storm 4 covered the climax of the series, pretty much every character was at their most powerful in this game. Take Guy. All of a sudden, he went from awakening with the 6th gate to the 8th gate. He dominated up close, from a distance, and he could just straight up obliterate you with his jutsu. Night Guy literally goes through everything in the game. Even Almighty Push can't stop it. And if he starts to feel threatened, he can literally just triple jump away from you. He doesn't even die from using it. He just gets stunned after it runs out instead. This potentially opens you up to punishes, but you can actually just switch out if you have supports available. The only other awakening that could match this was probably Six Paths Madara. He summons his Limbo clones and gets access to myriad new abilities. His awakening actions lock you down from all angles, then boom, his jutsu closes a lightning rope around your neck. This is the ultimate area of effect awakening. You're not safe anywhere on the map. At this point, it wasn't even CC2's design making these awakenings busted. The Naruto source material pretty much demanded that they be strong. Instead, they leaned into these powerful forms, and it paid off in a big way. They were still broken, and they weren't much of a comeback mechanic, but at least that was finally intentional. At this point, we've seen awakenings lose their identity. We've seen transformations so broken, they scarred online players for life. But what we haven't seen is the single most broken awakening of all time. One contender for that title might be Sorcery. He's been around since Storm 2, but his awakening actually peaked later in the series. His combos are used to summon these swarms of puppets towards the opponent. They track and apply poison on hit, but they were slow to come out. This balanced him out at first, until the inclusion of dash canceling in Generations. Sorcery players learned very quickly that they could cancel the startup of his combos by dashing. This stunned them and allowed for suffocating offense and near guaranteed damage. Being on the receiving end of this feels hopeless. Most awakenings got nerfed, this one got reworked entirely. They ended up just giving him the version of Sorcery that Konkro has as his awakening. So, if we're only counting Storm games with online matchmaking, then Sorcery is easily number 1. But if you want to include Storm 1, then Itachi has the most broken awakening in Storm history. Awakenings in this game still had the whiplash effect, but otherwise they were totally risk-free power-ups. You didn't lose access to supports or ninja tools, and you could still use your ultimate. Some of them even had unique, quirky effects. Kakashi and Sasuke became impervious to melee attacks thanks to their Sharingans, and Tsunade and Kabuto would heal continuously. Itachi, he literally slowed down time, and there was virtually no counterplay to this. No proximity limit, nothing to hit or trigger first. You were just straight up in Itachi's domain as soon as he finished charging his awakening. It enabled saucy combos and powered up his grab with the Mangekyo pattern. This is the type of awakening that could have only worked in Storm 1. Other games tried and failed to balance awakenings, but Storm 1 never bothered to try in the first place. Because without online matchmaking, there was really no need to. These are the original awakenings, the place where it all started. The only stop left is to see what awakenings look like today. So, after years of chaos, experimentation, and nerfs, it does feel like CC2 has finally settled on what they want the awakening to be. In Connections, they have short durations. There's no instant awakening, no giant inescapable combos, there's not a single character running the game. And even generic power-ups feel useful thanks to the team awakenings they introduced in Storm 4. Nowadays, they're just temporary power spikes, useful for comebacks or for pressing an advantage. Connections may have finally balanced them out, but you know what? There's a part of me that honestly misses the chaos. The terror of seeing my opponent pick Danzo. That evil feeling I got when I awakened with Sage Naruto. Those moments are missing from Storm Connections. And I never really realized what role those overpowered awakenings played in my classic online Naruto Storm experience. So let me ask you guys, would you rather awakenings be fair and balanced, or broken to the point of terror? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.
忍びらしく戦場で散ったか。